it would be logical now to give the floor to the Market Council. Andrei Staver should be there. Is he connected? Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. Sorry, my video is off. In the previous two presentations, all the key figures and objectives were mentioned. I would like to briefly focus on just one thing that could play a significant role, a certain role in the acceleration of the processes already begun. Voluntary demand pertaining to the renewables in the first place. The basic scenarios from the previous talks were development of the renewables as part of the government support measures that were mentioned before. Indeed, the figures there are quite impressive, but not huge. But just recently, a regulation was adopted on microgeneration, and an important role could be played by less than economic behavior of the consumers, where the renewables would be selected not because that electricity is less expensive or comparable in pricing, but because of because it could be morally comfortable for businesses or consumers who would like to get some independence of the prices of the common grid, where the dynamics could be not that positive for the consumer. And if you put a solar battery on your rooftop, would be less dependent on exogenous factors such as the electricity pricing policy. Another thing is the fact that large transnational corporations who announce they're going to be responsible consumers with reducing their carbon footprint at the corporate level, RESNO and other initiatives of the same type, where businesses where not only a business itself tries to reduce its own consumption from conventional sources by introducing renewables or low carbon sources, perhaps using their electricity origin, electricity certificates, but those corporations start to select other companies in their supply chain, depending on how responsible their own behavior is. I do not only try to become more responsible myself, but I insist on other people I work with to do the same. That is a second important aspect to be taken into account, and it could have a serious factor of acceleration of the development of the renewables with their growing share in the energy balance. Well, I'm not talking about remote areas or isolated areas here, because a reduction of dependency on fuel, thanks to the renewables, that is really important. And it could be even economically efficient in some places already now, but we should understand that the amount of electricity consumed in those remote areas is not that big. Even if the projects being currently discussed are implemented, they will not add too much of renewables in the total energy bundles, as opposed to voluntary demand. As the technology of renewables is getting less and less expensive, because with voluntary demand, you don't face requirements to use localized equipment any longer. Unfortunately, Russian-made equipment cannot always compete with international analogs. So the economics of renewables could be even better from such projects than from those other projects that are done using government support. Thank you, Andrei. An interesting idea that as we make economic assessments, we use multiples for the entire value chain. You are talking about the voluntary demand, which does resemble that a little, as we try to make our counterparts to look towards new low-carbon technologies. Of course, that's a micro level. That's an effort at the micro level, but that's an